radical left has taken over the Democratic Party.
Hello and welcome to Think Progressively, covering politics and all the other chaos life has to offer. This is episode 31, recorded on Thursday, April 1st, from Milwaukee. I'm Joe.
And I'm Jason.
And on today's episode, special guest Jessica Katzenmeyer will be joining us to talk about empowering trans people in politics.
And a very topical guest today, because yesterday was Transgender Visibility Day.
It was.
So not how we planned this out, but works out perfectly from that.
Yeah, but first, the headlines.
No dumb April Fool's jokes from us either.
I really tried to think of one, and I wasn't witty enough.
No, I would have vetoed that anyway. I would have let you do it, and then I would have just cut it out. I hate.
Well, here's the problem, though. It's like they wouldn't be hearing it on April Fool's Day, so it would look really dumb.
Well, it looks really dumb anyway.
Okay. Still, the headlines.
The fact is that everything he's saying so far is simply a lie. I'm not here to call out his lies. Everybody knows he's a liar.
Up first in headlines, the trial for Derek Chauvin, the police officer who murdered George Floyd, has begun.
So have you been watching any of the trial out of Minneapolis?
A little bit, not too much. I've been super busy with other stuff and all the other craziness that's been going on.
I missed today, but basically the highlights, the defense is blaming everyone except Derek Chauvin for George Floyd's death. They say, well, it wasn't the fact that he knelt on his neck for 10 minutes that killed him. He had heart problems and had fentanyl in his system, and that's what killed him. And also everyone who was standing around getting angry that they were watching a murder in front of their eyes, they're to blame because they distracted the police officer who was then unable to take care with George Floyd.
Is it true? I saw something say that he was just following orders as a defense. Was that a real defense?
I didn't see that in the footage that I watched, but they're using everything else. I don't know whose orders they would say, but...
Well, I think they even trotted out, it was one of George Floyd's girlfriends or friends or something like that to talk about how they were addicted to fentanyl.
He has a history of drug abuse.
George Floyd isn't on trial here.
Right.
Are you kidding me?
He's the victim. And look at our society. Opioid addiction, drug addiction is a huge issue. That doesn't mean anyone who has any kind of past history with drug abuse should then be open to be murdered by the police.
Well, exactly.
One interesting witness that I saw was the dispatcher for the police who was watching the footage, and she said she was worried that the feed was frozen.
Okay.
Because Derek Chauvin was kneeling on George Floyd for so long.
Oh, okay.
That she couldn't believe that he would actually do that. This is not normal. She's been a dispatcher for years. She's watched thousands, if not tens of thousands of arrests take place. Doubt she has seen anyone murdered in real time like that before.
Interesting.
And apparently laying on the ground, pleading for your life, begging for your mother to help you as you're dying is resisting arrest, according to the defense.
Okay. So what's the likelihood that Derek Chauvin will be convicted of these crimes?
Probably not very likely. Statistically speaking, it's not very likely. We all saw the Rodney King trial. Police are rarely held accountable for their brutality.
I mean, we saw even it happened in Louisville with Breonna Taylor.
And here in Kenosha.
Yep. He's got to get something, man. I'm just going to lose my mind if he doesn't.
The prosecution, the attorney general, and the police are on the same side. And that usually means that they don't really use their best material. They don't trot out the best case in these types of situations. And the public is so conditioned to never question anything when the police are involved. And what the defense is doing, just smearing the victim in this case, usually works.
Which is so gross.
Unfortunately.
Well, here's to hoping that Derek Chauvin does receive proper consequences and justice is actually served, but who knows, because this is America.
We shall see.
And speaking of This Is America, Lil Nas X, rapper, has been in the public eye because of criticism over his satanic shoes.
I've been criticizing Lil Nas X for years.
Hey, Old Town Road was a jam.
Ugh. He tried to popularize country music. Hasn't the black community suffered enough?
Oh.
I am fully on board with canceling Lil Nas X, But for Old Town Road, this new song actually looks pretty good.
That's just because it has Satan in it.
Satan's pretty hot.
All right, sounds good.
So the controversy began when he released the music video for his new single, Montero, Call Me By Your Name, which features satanic imagery and Lil Nas X seducing and then murdering Satan. I don't know why conservatives don't like that. That's more than God, Jesus, and the Holy Spirit have done in the thousands of years they've had to take care of that problem. But apparently that is akin to devil worship, or it's somehow seducing the souls of children.
But the big controversy comes from these shoes that were actually shown in the video and sold afterwards. An art company that worked with Lil Nas X called Mischief made custom Nike shoes into devil, satanic, amazing, I don't know what you want to call them. They're beautiful. Pieces of art, I guess you can say, and sold them online as well as showed them in the video. They feature the number 666, a pentagram over the laces, and an actual drop of human blood in the sole of the shoe. They sold 666 pairs at $1,018 each to reference the obviously number of the devil and Luke 10:18, which also references Satan. And they sold out within a minute because amazingness.
I don't know if anyone's going to actually receive those shoes. They were also sued by Nike very promptly.
Right, exactly.
I'm not sure what the legality is of modifying and reselling shoes. Who knows? But I guess the courts will decide that aspect of it.
But what we want to talk about is how conservatives lost their minds over this.
The snowflakes were very triggered and definitely are trying to cancel both Lil Nas X
and Nike.
Mischief, and even Nike, even though Nike had nothing to do with it.
And they had to come out very publicly saying, we have nothing to do with this. They should have leaned into it. It would have been great.
So what I've been learning is that Lil Nas X, along with being a rapper, is also a very accomplished internet troll and spends a lot of his time on Twitter basically burying his critics and anyone who dares to step up to him. This has included conservative talking heads Candace Owens,
crazy gun girl Caitlin Bennett,
a.k.a. Doo-Doo Pants. She's known for advocating for open carry on university property and
is an absolute right-wing bigot.
Right, and being drunk and passed out and pooping herself at a frat party. And that was brought up in the Twitter exchange, where Caitlin Bennett started off by saying that she was happy that she was blocked by Lil Nas X, and he responded by saying, I can still see your tweets, doo-doo pants. He used a different term, but I don't feel like generating the bleep on that one. Which she then, of course, responded by saying, do you still talk to your dad? Which, way to throw a racial stereotype in there because Caitlin Bennett is a terrible person. Which, being the internet troll he is, Lil Nas X responded with, yep, and I will boink yours, which is great. That is the response that you should give to someone who is just being ridiculous. And then, of course, she took that and ran, victim mentality, remember, that the conservatives hate, and basically said that he was threatening to rape her dad, which I took it as it being consensual.
Wait, okay, so here's the thing. Caitlin Bennett's like a nobody conservative crazy person, right? Fine. But we even have South Dakota Governor Kristi Noem spending actual taxpayer time ranting on Twitter about this crazy nonsense.
Yeah, she said we're in a literal fight for the souls of America.
Oh my God, it's so ridiculous.
And then Lil Nas X's response was, you are an entire governor. Why are you wasting your time talking about shoes?
Which is very true.
Yep.
So,
and further racist conservative commentary came from internet wannabe celebrity pastor Greg Locke, who on his very terrible live stream, which was glitchy and very difficult to listen to, called Lil Nas X a thug for some reason. I wonder why he went right there. It's not really part of his persona. He's not Tupac. He doesn't have a thug life tattoo across his stomach. That's not really the image that he portrays. I wonder why someone like Greg Locke would jump to that insult right away when discussing this. And also, he seemed very upset that he liked Old Town Road, and then his favorite rapper, I'm guessing, would make a song like Montero and have Satan shoes. That seemed to be his real issue there.
After all this, I'll have to say, this podcast loves Lil Nas X. Keep going. Do your thing.
Stop making country music. That's all I ask. So his reasoning for doing this, he said that he basically grew up in fear being a gay black man in the church when you're told that that's wrong and you're going to go to hell. So he made a music video where he went to hell.
Yep.
And to basically show that he wasn't going to live in fear of who he was anymore, and he was going to throw it back in everybody's face.
Well, and we talked about this in a previous episode where someone's religion can be such a negative impact on their life that they'll feel broken for their entire life to the point where they'll either do self-harm or they'll harm others. And this is a very constructive way of handling that same exact fear-mongering. So good for him. I'm very happy about this. And more people should speak out about the negative fear-mongering that's done by super religious bigots.
And all of the concern over Satan imagery to an atheist, it literally sounds like people getting upset that someone's making Voldemort merchandise.
I mean, right.
It's just a villain from a book that you're obsessed with. It's not real. Don't worry about it.
Yeah. Up next, according to a study by the Center for Countering Digital Hate, found that 65% of disinformation about vaccines were linked to 12 accounts. 12 accounts, Jason, linked to over a majority of all disinformation of vaccines on the internet and social media.
It's what people have been postulating for a while when you see all of these misinformation campaigns around elections and everything else, that it's not this groundswell of people doing this. It's a small handful that are having an outsized effect on public opinion.
And okay, let's split it this way too. This is an outside group outside of Facebook and Twitter and YouTube that found this out. This wasn't Facebook and YouTube who did this research. Are you really telling me that Facebook didn't know that the vast majority of this misinformation was coming from only 12 accounts? They didn't do anything about it?
They were probably getting a lot of engagement.
Well, that's the problem.
Yeah.
I mean, other studies show that negative engagement and actually right-wing misinformation trends better on social media than any other posts on that platform. It's just a way of making money and profit off of selling crazy conspiracy theories because people want that. There's actual motivation to buy this type of stuff. Well, at least as far as concepts and thoughts go.
But I thought it's the left-wing tech companies and left-wing Facebook and left-wing Twitter, and all they care about is banning conservatives.
Yeah, nope.
I'm all for more government regulation of the internet in general when it comes to net neutrality, and we should definitely look at the influence that the giant tech companies have in everyone's daily lives and how they use our information, and it should be something that our government protects us from.
Well, and the same organization that brought this study also said they should deplatform these people as soon as possible. Here's a quote from CEO of the Center for Countering Digital Hate, Imran Abed. Quote, "They're not just individuals. These are individuals who have behind them large companies that they themselves run, which pump our misinformation with the aim of persuading people not to follow the clinical guidance and to instead buy their false cures or to buy access to the information they claim to as the truth about coronavirus and about vaccines." So they're doing this to sell alternative medicine and alternative products to these people, and they're being successful with it.
Capitalism.
Ugh.
And in more threats to public safety news, the Wisconsin Supreme Court has overturned Governor Tony Evers' emergency face mask mandate.
What are your thoughts on this?
Something that I suspected was coming for a while.
Yeah, me too.
The emergency health order is only supposed to last for, 60 days?
Yep.
And it is supposed to be extended by the legislature, which is Republican-controlled in Wisconsin, and as we've talked about many times, is unwilling to do anything about coronavirus, because apparently it's bad for GOP politics to not have people dying.
We're going to die that own the libs, man.
So Tony Evers has just kept declaring new emergencies every time one expires, and basically the state Supreme Court ruled that that is not within his power, and we are now one of the few states that does not have a face mask mandate. And because the mask mandate was lifted, Wisconsin is at risk of losing $50 million per month in food share assistance from the federal government.
Because we don't have a COVID-19 emergency in place.
And now it's up to the Republican legislature. They're the only ones that can issue a mask mandate and basically put everyone at less risk and also get that funding back. They will not do that.
Correct. Well, and I want to make something very clear here, too. We may have talked about this in a previous episode, but I'm going to say it again because it makes me very angry. The GOP, or at least the Wisconsin GOP, throughout this whole thing, has been talking about the constitutionality, the rules of process, and all that type of stuff, and say that Tony Evers was overusing his powers. First off, these are powers that the GOP stripped. Let's start with that. But you also need to understand that from the get-go, the GOP has been against any and all safety regulations and orders and mask mandates that Tony Evers has ever considered putting in place. From the get-go with pandemic, including up to a year ago. So when they talk about, well, we're just following rules of process or the state constitution, they're full of it. They mean none of it because at the end of the day, it's about not taking COVID seriously. It's about not taking a pandemic and the health of our fellow citizens seriously.
They were very careful in this ruling to not say that they were against a mask mandate.
Because they've been saying that for months now.
But they won't actually issue one.
No. Again, what's the point of having a government if the government doesn't work for the people and for the benefit of the people it's supposed to represent? Why would you elect a government that doesn't do anything?
Why, Wisconsin? Why would you do that?
The good news is, at least from my perspective, I truly don't think this is going to mean a lot. I think at this point, we are one of the best states in the United States right now as far as vaccinating its people, or at least utilizing its vaccinations that it has. COVID cases are down currently in Wisconsin, at least as of this recording.
Trending up a little bit, unfortunately.
Right, unfortunately. But at least not as big as the states around us. And I think at this point, getting rid of the mask mandate isn't going to do much as far as the attitudes of the people are concerned. I think people who actually care about wearing masks for the benefit of the entire state are going to continue to wear masks. They're going to continue to follow private policies of any businesses that ask them to wear masks. They're going to keep doing that. And the people who are going to say, hooray, we don't have to wear masks anymore, were the same people who have been complaining this entire time and probably haven't been wearing masks anyway. So I don't think this is actually going to change a lot. We're almost done. We're almost out of the tunnel. We see the light at the end of the tunnel. We're right there. We just have to make it through without anything crazy happening.
Hopefully we don't fumble on the 5-yard line.
Ooh, but and for Wisconsin sports, though, that's a bad reference because that's all we do. We have a bad rep of choking.
I don't know, man. I'm a Vikings fan. You can't talk to me about choking.
Oh, you just don't even make it there, though.
I surely do. Or 15-1 and had a field goal kicker that didn't miss a kick all year, the first guy ever. And then he missed 2 field goals in the NFC Championship game. But
if you're going to take anything away from this, just know the Packers are better than the Vikings. Moving on.
Until Aaron Rodgers'
Moving
arm falls off. All right. Next story.
That's such an angry word. Next story.
In our next story, Florida Representative Matt Gaetz has come under federal investigation.
Our favorite Republican crazy person.
For having sex with a 17-year-old girl and possible sex trafficking.
Yeah.
Those good old Republican family values. So apparently he's been under investigation from the previous Justice Department under Bill Barr. So it's been ongoing now for months for potentially taking a 17-year-old girl on a interstate plane trip to have sex with her, which would be sex trafficking. Gaetz's defense so far has been to say
extortion.
Yeah, that one, he's being extorted by a former Justice Department person, which he's a private attorney now and could have potentially just be looking for a settlement, which is perfectly legal. And even if it's not, that didn't have anything to do with the case being investigated in the first place.
Well, I'll quote him here. Over the past several weeks, my family and I have been victims of an organized criminal extortion involving a former DOJ official seeking $25 million while threatening to smear my name. I demand the DOJ immediately release the tapes made at their direction, which implicate their former colleague in crimes against me based on these false accusations.
Which is not an actual defense.
No.
If you murder somebody and you're on trial for murder, and then someone else who was a witness of that murder tries to blackmail you for it, that doesn't mean it didn't happen or that you're not guilty.
I mean, at least in minds of rational people. But what makes me very happy about this whole story is that no one is touching this with like a 50-foot pole.
Yeah, Trump officials have already started smearing Matt Gaetz, even though he was, a Trump lackey for a long time.
Even Tucker Carlson on Fox News was like,
that
keep
was
me out of this,
very
man.
odd. Yeah, that was a very odd interview.
Yeah.
Look it up. Watch the interview with Tucker Carlson. It's great.
Oh.
He tries to use Tucker as like an alibi at one point, and he was like, no, I don't remember that at all.
Literally, I have the quotes from the interview. This is Gaetz talking to Carlson. You and I went to dinner about 2 years ago. Your wife was there, and I brought a friend of mine. You remember her? And Carlson quickly says, I don't remember the woman you were speaking of or the context at all, honestly. And then after the interview, Carlson says, that was one of the weirdest interviews I've ever conducted.
Quickly backpedaling from his association with Matt Gaetz.
So Gaetz has no allies right now, which is good, because I hope this completely ruins his political career.
He has reportedly already discussed not running for office anymore and taking a job with Newsmax.
And supposedly Fox News, which Fox News immediately came out saying, nope, we are not considering Matt Gaetz and have never considered Matt Gaetz.
He's also, as a defense, said that his generosity with his former girlfriends is being miscategorized. He feels like that's the origin of this allegation or this investigation, which is shady to say the least when you hear the details of the story and then the way he's trying to spin that. It really does seem like there is some fire to this smoke. Couldn't have happened to a better guy.
Ugh.
I guess don't have sex with minors?
Yeah,
is that the takeaway?
I think that is a good piece of it. Don't usually take advice from this podcast like ours, but I think that's a good piece of advice to take.
Might have to put a sign up in Congress now, just so that they know.
Maybe Matt Gaetz will have to go through like all his like Republican neighbors and things like that, and just like actually reveal that he's a sexual offender.
He would, if he is convicted, he would have to register as a sex offender.
Yep.
Which I think in Florida is not that rare, but sick burn on Florida.
Just don't be like Matt Gaetz.
In just about every aspect of your life.
I would say, not even just in this, just in general, don't be like Matt Gaetz.
That was really a productive segment, wasn't it? It's hard to get any word in with this clown.
Our special guest tonight is a former candidate for Wisconsin State Assembly. She is the second transgender woman to run for state assembly in Wisconsin. And while unfortunately she did not win her race, her victory in the primary made her the first transgender woman to win any election in Wisconsin or in Milwaukee and Waukesha counties. She's an LGBTQ activist, a political activist, a podcaster, a storm chaser, and an actress in her spare time, which, by the way, Jessica, we're going to have to talk about this because I'm super interested. So please welcome to the show, Jessica Katzenmeyer. How are you?
Great. Thanks, you guys. Thank you for that nice introduction. I got to say, I am a former podcaster. Thank you. I really appreciate that a lot.
No, it's all
not
good.
our competition anymore. So.
And that's all. That's the only reason why. Yeah. So I want to start with your story. Can you tell us a little bit about yourself and how you got involved in politics?
Okay. So I'm Jessica Katzenmeyer. I'm a transgender woman, and I've been transitioning now as of tomorrow will be 7 years living as the me-self that we all know and love. And I originally started getting involved in politics way back in 2014 when Mary Burke was running for governor. And I was also helping out Christine Smickey over in the 20th Assembly District over there on south side of Milwaukee. And I've always just been fascinated with the work ethic of politicians and how much passion and time and energy they put into their campaigns. And I knew I always had this interest in politics because I did minor in political science in college over at UW Milwaukee. And I just wanted to do something more with it. So I jumped the gun. I did Emerge Wisconsin. I was a graduate of that wonderful program. And I graduated there in 2017 in the spring. And for those who don't know, Emerge is a program that trains Democratic women on how to run campaigns and run for office. And I knew I wanted to run for state assembly sometime. I just didn't know when my time was going to be quite yet. And I'm going to lead into why I ran for office. And the reason why I ran for office is a couple years ago in 2019 in the summer, just as summer was starting, I should say, Father's Day of that year, a house fire destroyed the house I was renting here in West Allis. I'd been there for nearly 3 years. And just like that, everything was gone. Everything I had worked for 40 years of my life at the time was gone.
Oh, man.
And the day after that, I collapsed on my friend's floor whose house I was staying at about 11:30 at night. That's on a Monday night. I remember calling out saying, call 911. I can't breathe. And I fell into a coma. I woke up 3 days later at St. Luke's Hospital here on the south side of Milwaukee.
Oh, my goodness.
And found out I nearly died from a staph infection in my lungs.
Oh, my goodness.
I was in the hospital for about a week. I got out. And of course, you get the long, detailed hospital bill list.
Mhm.
And if I did not have health insurance, which I have it through the marketplace, I would have had to pay $80,000 to save my life. And right there and then, I knew that 2020 was going to be my year. I'm going to get better. I'm going to get stronger. I got healthier. I lost a bunch of weight. I lost like 62 pounds of weight in 7 months-ish.
All right.
And January of 2020, I found my paperwork to run for office. And that was just 7 months after this tragic event happened. Because to me, nobody should ever have to worry about going into debt or filing for bankruptcy over healthcare related costs. So that's my main reason for jumping into the race. And I had to move back into my place right now, where I live right now here on 72nd and Greenfield in West Dallas in the 15th Assembly District. And I wanted to challenge San Filippo. So, and that's when it all began. I also do want to make a mention that I forgot that I did work for Erica Flynn when she ran for assembly back in 2018. So I got a really good grasp of how to run a assembly campaign. And she ran in the 84th district, which is just south of the 15th district, and Greenfield and parts of Milwaukee. And there's like a southern part of New Berlin there too.
Mhm.
So
Awesome.
Even with insurance, a big health event like that can still lead to bankruptcy.
mhm.
So,
Yeah, because they have like the follow-up appointments as well too.
mhm.
You know, like, are you okay? Like, what kind of medicines do you need to make sure that this doesn't happen again? And another thing too about that, so I have asthma. And for anybody who has asthma knows, most people are probably on some type of control inhaler. And the one they prescribed me, it's called Brio. It's about the size of, imagine my thumb and my index finger spread out. And it retails for $425 a month
Oof.
if you do not have insurance. My car, I own a Toyota Sienna, and my car payment is $415 a month. That little thing is more than my car payment. Believe it or not. There's something wrong with this healthcare system.
Well, we were actually going to talk to you about healthcare because we saw that in your platform as well later on the show. But I mean, I think this is a perfect time to talk about it.
Yep.
So yeah, let's talk a little bit more about healthcare and stuff. So what are your thoughts in general about, not just Wisconsin's healthcare? Obviously, we can talk about the expansion of Medicaid and things like that, especially with what Tony Evers, our governor, for anyone who's outside Wisconsin, has been trying to do, or even just nationally, like the idea of, do you prefer anything like a Medicare for all option, or do you talk about more of something like what Joe Biden wants, which is kind of like a public option? So in general, what are your thoughts on healthcare and what do you think we should be doing right now?
I love the idea of Medicare for all, but I also knew going into my campaign when I was kind of forming up this idea of what we ended up having as the 4 pillars of healthcare, which I ran on. I kind of have to look at things a little bit more realistically and be like, okay, what do we think we can get done here in Wisconsin? Yeah, would healthcare for all be great? Of course. But what's the current makeup of the legislature in Madison? Is that going to happen? Most likely not. And so I have the idea of, okay, let's expand Badger Care. Let's cover more families. Let's raise that up to 80,000 for families because more people are having kids these days. And in the West Dallas side of my district, the mean income here is under $40,000. So I know that there's a lot of people who are struggling here. And I'm sure that one of those things they're struggling with is healthcare bills. And the other parts of my plan was let's expand mental health care access because COVID was just starting around that time, a couple months later after I filed for candidacy. And we kind of know that with all of us isolated in our homes that are going to work and going home, as I've been doing the past year, just like everybody else, it gets kind of lonely because, okay, Zoom, yeah, I can see my friends on Zoom. That's great. But I miss hugging people. I miss having that camaraderie, when you're just all hanging out in a house or a bar or something. And that's why mental health care, I believe, was a very big, important part of that. And that's an issue that's not really talked about a lot. Also, legalizing medical marijuana because in the referendum a couple of years ago, the statewide referendum, over 80% of people want to see that happen. And I do believe that this is a part of healthcare because many people use medical marijuana for the medical benefits that it has. And I've seen it help so many people. And then also, just as I just mentioned, fixing the prescription drug access. We need to add some caps onto these very expensive drugs like asthma medication. Another one would be insulin shots, because those are common things that a lot of people take nowadays. And there's no reason why should we be paying, $400 for a asthma inhaler when, high blood pressure medicine maybe costs like $5 or $10. It doesn't make any sense to me at all.
The United States definitely pays more than the rest of the world for the same prescription drugs because we do nothing to try to limit the profits that the pharmaceutical companies can make here.
Right. Yeah, exactly. And there's countries, just in the north of us, Canada has nationalized healthcare, and their system works pretty good, as well as many countries in Europe have it.
I was saying the UK love their National Health Service. We are like on this weird island of just saying absolutely, hell no to any type of, standardized healthcare in a country when it'd be so beneficial when we're actually seeing real world examples of it working.
Right, exactly. And you know what? In general, you might have to pay a little bit more taxes, but, I'm willing to pay a little bit more taxes in order to have that work in our country, because one of my mottos and slogans in my campaign was, "It's a healthy state is a strong state." It should be in our best interest to take care of our own people. Am I right?
Totally. So I think when we have things like the GOP who are talking about not doing anything because they're worried about paying for someone else's healthcare, I think they envision what healthcare is completely incorrectly. We should see investing in healthcare as an actual investment in its people and in our labor force. Having a healthier labor force does better for the economy, which is exactly what Republicans would want.
And we pay more for healthcare than the rest of the world that has public healthcare does.
Right. So our private healthcare system isn't even cheaper.
No, you would pay more in taxes, but you would save money in the long run because you wouldn't be paying so much for the same healthcare, and your employer wouldn't be paying for it either.
That's exactly right, because another way I look at healthcare is just like car maintenance, right? You do these little things to prevent the big bill at the end of the day. You go, you get your oil changes, you get your fluids flushed every now and then, maybe your brakes changed, and you prevent that big bill at the end of the day. It's the same thing with healthcare. I can't tell you how many times I heard when I was in the hospital a couple of years ago that so many people wait to the last minute because it's getting harder and harder to afford those copays, because many people are living paycheck to paycheck, and we got to put food on the table. We have kids or big family,
Exactly.
and yeah, I totally get it.
So, and you have to kind of settle a debate between Jason and me here. So,
Okay.
I would argue that the district that you ran in is pretty conservative. I mean, you ask West Dallas is kind of like a mixed bag, but then you have like New Berlin area, which is like very conservative and white majority. I mean, the entire area is very white,
especially the western side of it.
Jason says your district was more of a, we'll say, purplish area.
It's called Westalica, Joe.
Oh my God. So what do you think? Do you think you ran in a more conservative district, or did you see something that could have made it more purple?
I think when getting into this race, of course, I believed myself that I could win. I mean, I think it's important that any candidate looks at whatever district that they're running in or territory, whatever it may be. You have to have the mindset that, every single day leading up to November 3rd last year, I'm going to win this election. The way I looked at it, I knew it was going to be tough. I was facing off an 8-year incumbent who is probably, arguably one of the top 5 Republicans in the state assembly, and chair of the Assembly Committee on Health. And of course, I ran on healthcare because I wanted to prove them wrong. So I looked at it as, what? If I got a strong team together, yes, I think it was more of a leaning conservative district at the beginning, but I made it more purple in the end because I worked my butt off in this campaign.
And you fundraised like crazy, where I saw the numbers that you were pulling in and they were astronomical.
Yeah, because by the time people were realizing that, oh my God, District 15 is in play here.
Yeah.
They're like, yeah, the Democratic Party was putting in a lot of money on ads, and it was helping the value of my campaign go higher and higher. I started out with $100 of my own money. And I was, keep in mind, I got no experience running a campaign because this is my first time ever running for office. By election day, so 10 months later, it was valued at nearly $250,000. So it was like 321,000 something. I got to look at my last report. But that's a testament to my hard work because I had to work really hard just to get noticed and tell people, you know what? This is going to be a coast race because the numbers are changing. It's becoming more liberal. I won West Dallas in my campaign, in my election. I won West Dallas. I got over 5,000 votes in New Berlin. I came within 3,000 votes, which is actually not that big of a margin, I think.
No, I think what you did was fantastic. And again, I've seen New Berlin for what it was, and oof, it's a fun time. So I think the dent that you made is, again, miraculous, astronomical, any amazing word that you can put into it. I thought the work you did was fantastic. I am not in your district, so I wasn't able to vote for you, but I told as many people who I do know who live in this district to vote for you as much as I could. And I would see your numbers and I was cheering you on from the south side of Milwaukee. So it was absolutely amazing.
I actually grew up right there, not in West Dallas, but in Johnson's Woods, which is in Milwaukee, basically right next door to West Dallas. And that's, I'm not surprised that you gained, as we talked about in our redlining episode, that area was historically redlined because it was filled with mostly European immigrants and factory workers around that area.
I was going to say that's another issue about these districts. If you ever take a look at the map of assembly districts in the Milwaukee County area or Milwaukee metro area, it looks like a really good artist took the pencil and draw these little lines everywhere. And there was times like when I was campaigning when people would put in requests for signs, I had to actually look at the map. Like, am I still in district? Oh wait, yeah, this neighborhood's good. But then you go across the street, like part of the district borders like 74th Street for a few blocks, then it goes to 75th Street, and then it goes to 76th Street. It's like, okay, what the heck's going on here?
Oh, the gerrymandering's terrible in this state. It's god awful.
It is. And honestly, when you look at my numbers in this race compared to what Sanfilippo did, I outraced them probably about 3-1, more than 3-1. And the work I did, I outworked them. I should have won this election by looking at all the numbers. It was gerrymandering, I believe, that did me in. I even hit my win number. My win number was 14,000. Yet, of course, we didn't expect 83% turnout on election day in Milwaukee County, but I'm proud I hit my numbers. I'm proud of the campaign I ran. I'm proud of the issues brought up, and I made a pretty good name for myself.
Well, and that's kind of what I was thinking too, because the turnout of your race was kind of surprising to me as well after following it for so long. And I'm sure with a lot of other candidates, especially in Wisconsin, like a lot of Wisconsin Democrats just did not do well, unfortunately, in 2020, when we were expected to do really well as a state. And I think that's just because with the 2020 election, a lot of people just came out to vote for Trump. And they were just super excited. We were not expected to have this high of turnout for Republicans and Trump supporters. So do you think that's kind of what happened with your race as well, where I think you definitely hit your margins. I think you definitely hit your marks that you needed to make. But I think just a lot more Republicans turned out in your area than I expected to.
Yeah, I would agree that that's a part of it too, because the margin was just under 3,000, 2,999 to be exact. And yeah, I mean, for those who've ever been to New Berlin, it's like crazy Trump country out there. You still see Trump signs out there.
Oh, yeah, we do.
Even today. Yeah. But I knew that was going to be the biggest challenge in my race, is winning over independents. And that's why, I wanted to run a liberal campaign, but I also had to come a little bit more to the center. I couldn't run a liberal campaign as I could, like in the inner city. So I think I did a really great job with messaging. And I think healthcare is always a top issue that really resonates with people, and especially with the pandemic hitting, that's what everybody was talking about last year.
And actually, I was going to talk about that as well. So obviously, there are tons of challenges that come with running a campaign. You had a very unique challenge of running your very first campaign, which was during a global pandemic. So now I worked as an organizer during the same time, but I wasn't in your area. So I kind of know what it's like to campaign-ish during a global pandemic and doing everything virtually. But you want to tell us a little bit about what it was like doing your very first campaign when you haven't done this before, and then trying to switch everything to digital?
Yeah, that was definitely a big challenge. And I could definitely speak to that. I mean, I've gone through Emerge Wisconsin. I've gone through LGBTQ Victory Institute as well. And, you learn all the trainings of how to do like a basic campaign like you would in any year. I came up with a campaign plan. I was working on that in December before I filed. I was organizing my team together because I wanted to have a strong team. So when I announced my campaign, it was off and running from there. And that's exactly what happened. I announced on January 15th of 2020, and we had just about 2 months of traditional campaigning in the books. Like fundraising was going well. I think I'd raised over 6,500 by mid-March when the pandemic hit. So I was constantly on the phones talking to people. I was going to events, getting my name out there to the spring candidate events because the spring election was coming up there in April. And then all of a sudden, it's like you hit this wall. The state is locked down. Okay, get my team together for our weekly meetings. It's like, what do we do, guys? What do we do? Then we have to learn all these technological things like Zoom, and we had to get really creative of how we're going to do fundraising events, because most fundraising events are done in person, where you have the nice little friendly person, volunteer sitting at the desk. And so when everybody comes in, they have to fill out a card, and it's more of an environment, a welcoming environment for people to give money. Now, when you go to a digital campaign and you're having fundraising events on Zoom, the challenge becomes getting those people to actually log on and then be like, hey, give your little spiel. Could you please donate $50, $100, whatever it may be to my campaign? That was a big challenge right there, because maybe people jump on, but then they don't donate. Or you have the people who say they're going to show up and then they don't show up at all. And it was actually a time during my campaign, I talked about this in an article I wrote for Our Lives, that there was a period of time, a couple of times, where I almost felt like giving up, because it was so hard trying to navigate through the pandemic, trying to still get my message out. And I had just brought on a communications director too. And she was wonderful because we grew our social media presence. And that's what really helped me out as we went along. And then when we come up to April 15th, we have the period of nomination signatures. Okay, so what are we going to do for nomination signatures? Usually you go door to door with a clipboard or the farmer's market, and you can get up to 400 signatures easily in 3 weekends, easily. So we were waiting on guidance from the DPW, as well as the caucus, the Assembly caucus, of how we were going to go about this safely. And we ended up, along with all parties involved, we ended up sending out in the district about 700 mailings with nomination signature packets. It tells you how to do it. Fill out the form with prepaid return envelopes. And I had to make over 600 follow-up phone calls to finally get 292 signatures by May 31st. And I had 284 accepted. That felt like a COVID defeat right there. And my campaign manager and I, we were doing Superwoman poses in front of the state capitol the day we returned them, because, we had to relax a little bit here. This is a big hurdle in any campaign.
I can't even imagine. I still remember trying to get people to events for my stuff during the campaigns. And yeah, if we had 2 people show up, it was considered a success. So I totally get where you're coming from. It's good Lord. It was so hard.
Yeah. And you had to get really creative of what you're going to do. I mean, there's people doing online trivia or online karaoke, online dance parties. I came up with a couple of events where, one of the great things about running a digital campaign is you can grab guests from anywhere, literally anywhere. So I would team up with a bunch of other candidates in different parts of the state. And we would do hey, let's do a little forum together, just so that it helps get our name out there. And we had a lot of success there. And we were getting 20 people joining on an event. And I'm like, oh my God, there's 20 people on an event. This is awesome.
I imagine you also faced some unique challenges, being one of the only transgender candidates to ever run in Wisconsin. Can you give us some examples of reactions that you got from the public, both positive and negative?
Sure, absolutely. I'd say definitely in the beginning, as the goal of any candidate is to get your name out there, because name recognition is a big part of today's politics. It don't matter how good of a candidate you are or a bad candidate you are, people are going to always recognize your name when they open up their ballot and look, oh yeah, I know that person. So I knew when we went to all digital, I was going to have to get people on board with the social media, with their Twitter. And I kept begging people to pay attention to this race because I knew I could make it close. And I wasn't getting anybody to give me the time of day for that, because I was the rookie candidate. And many people thought I was probably 15 points down in the beginning. Now, as we roll past the primary and August, and my fundraising is starting to really jump up around then in August and September. And in the last few weeks in September, a internal poll was conducted on my district and showed that I was within 6 points of San Filippo. And oh my God, did the tide change? Instead of me begging people for attention, it switched to where people were begging me for attention, which was great. They're like, who's this Jessica Katzenmeyer person? She's working her butt off. Look, she's getting noticed now. And then a couple weeks before election day, another poll was done, and it showed that I was within a few points, that it was going to be close at that time. And I didn't even really have to spend much time on the phones for fundraising at that point. I was doing total voter contact through the telephones, not doing door to door like we traditionally would. And people were donating like left and right. It was oh my God, it's like you turn on the faucet and money was coming out. And that's how my numbers just jumped so high in terms of fundraising. And then they decided to put a lot of money in my race. And that's the story right there.
And now, for those who don't know, you ran against Representative Sanfilippo, who's known as a pretty ruthless Republican. Did he attack you for anything that like that, or did he attack you, try to smear you for being trans or anything like that?
Yeah, I should have gotten into a little bit more of that when I was telling a little bit of my story. I mean, of course I got backlash when the polls were showing that I was within a 6-point margin. Yeah, I mean, Sanfilippo finally woke up out of the shell. He said, oh my God, maybe I should actually do some campaigning about 5 weeks before the election. And then he saw his assembly campaign page come to life. And then I actually made him do doors and made him spend money, which is a big win as a candidate when you're going up against an entrenched incumbent like he is. So when the DPW was running Facebook ads in my area, of course, people can comment. Some of the ads got like well over 500 comments. And I would say probably about 80% of those comments were really negative comments, like making fun of my looks, making fun of, scrutinizing me. Oh, she's a trans woman. She's got some sort of disease or mental illness. And, the thing that I do is, you know what? I'm doing something good here. I'm getting my message out. And these people are the people that have a problem with it. And I just don't pay attention to it. I just keep focused on the end goal. Because, as a woman, we're already scrutinized a lot for like what we wear, what, our hair is looking like. And as a trans woman, it's even more scrutiny. And I had to work, I would say, 6 to 7 times harder than a average woman in any campaign. And yeah, that's a lot of the backlash I got. And I had an attack website put out on me.
Oh my.
Attack Facebook page. And there's attack ads against me too that Sanfilippo did, as well as there's like a Betsy DeVos super PAC that was putting money into it too.
Oh dear Lord, of course.
Yeah, tell me about it.
So, and I know you kind of just talked about this already, but I have to ask now, as someone who has never gone through, campaign before and hasn't been in the political spotlight, what was it really like to see a lot of those comments and even just attack ads for the first time? So, and I know we already talked about you kind of just keeping your head down, just keep pushing forward. I tried doing like some kind of look up. I mean, they all went away. They deleted all their stuff now because the election's over. But I even saw a page that said like Radical Jessica Katzenmeyer that's still on Facebook. So I'm just kind of curious.
Right? As an 80s kid, that's a compliment, right? Radical.
Yeah, I mean, that's like the far right favorite term to use
100%
Democrat.
Yep.
It's like, oh my God, she's too radical. And even on the Facebook, it's either the Facebook page or the website that was against me. It said even too radical for Joe Biden. And you know what's funny about that?
You were endorsed by Joe Biden.
Joe Biden endorsed me.
Yeah.
I'm like, yeah, take that.
So, like, how did it feel as like a first-time candidate to ever see this type of stuff before?
I just, like I said, I just tried to stay focused on my work. I wasn't really paying attention to those comments. My team was saying, yeah, don't even, give them the time of day because, you try to reason with people from the other side, but if you can't reason with them, why waste your time with them?
I agree.
Surround yourself with things that are going to make you feel positive and make you feel successful. And that's what I did. And at the same time, while these people were attacking me, I was getting media requests on a weekly basis. I was named as like a top 8 candidates to watch in 3 different LGBTQ magazines that are national. And I was getting that positive attention. And that really helped kept me going. And I would get calls of people saying, hey, we support you. Thank you for being out there. Thank you for putting yourself out there on the line. And when you're a candidate, you put yourself out there on the line. Like everything about your life is out there.
That probably has to be the hardest thing about deciding that you're going to run for office and try to do something for people, is you come under so much public scrutiny and so much investigation that, as someone who's very private, I'm barely on social media at all, I can't imagine living like that and worrying, what are they going to say about me?
What's your image like
right
today? And actually, I think that's a really good transition to like our second part of this interview, which is, so you took a lot of the big hits for other people and for other trans people in this state. So what did you really learn from your candidate and your experience that you can now give advice to future people who want to become more involved in politics, and especially like trans people who want to be more involved in politics?
One of the goals in my campaign was, even though I believed that I was going to win, I knew that there was also the possibility of me losing. Win or lose, I wanted to help inspire more people in the LGBTQ community to step up to the plate and run for office, especially in the trans community. And I mean, there's a lot of barriers when it comes to, especially in my community, running for office. Like money is a big one because campaigns are not cheap. I would say on an average year, most people are probably raising $40,000 to $50,000 for a typical state assembly campaign. This is definitely not an average year because we had the presidential election, and I also worked my butt off. But I also wanted to show to other people, especially within my community, and I mean the trans community, that, hey, look, I can do this. You can step up to the plate too. And I think that, the LGBTQ Victory Institute last year said that over 850 out LGBTQ candidates were running for office across the country at all these different level races.
That's awesome.
That was a record.
Yeah, that's awesome.
Yes. And I think it all starts when, somebody, say like Danica Rome, who runs in Virginia and wins her election as the first out transgender woman to run and win in that state house level. And then you see more and more people like Stephanie Byers, I think her name is, in Kansas.
Yep.
Taylor Small and Vermont, who also won her election. Sarah McBride just winning a state Senate seat in Delaware. And you see this success popping up. And now more and more people are like, oh my God, she did it. She did it. I can do this too. And run for office. It's an amazing experience, even despite the bad stuff. Just do it. Just run for office. You never know what kind of impact you're going to have. And I'm still finding out my impact today, even though it's been months after the election.
Well, and I think you said it perfectly too in your Our Lives article, which, by the way, we are going to link in the show notes. Just the idea of saying winning isn't everything. You may not have won this race, but the amount of impact that you made from this resonated all throughout the entire state and hopefully motivated more people to come out and be proud of who they were and not just say that, yes, I can be a trans person and actually be visible outside. I mean, and that's great too, but also I can be an active member of my society and be a leader while also being a trans person. And I'm going to be accepted for it. I think is an amazing thing to help people of future generations with.
Right. Because you step into the political arena, you're going to get knocked down many times. And I just stayed focused, and I wanted to prove to everybody wrong, that those who said that I couldn't do this, because believe me, when I was telling people late in 2019 that I was thinking about running for assembly, they're like, why don't you run for like an alder seat or something like that? Something that's a little more easier. I'm like, no, I want to run for assembly. And I wanted to prove all the haters wrong. And I think I did in this campaign. And anybody can do this.
And I totally agree with you too.
Oh, I was going to say too, the impact was amazing to see all the support I had. I think that you could arguably say that I was one of the more followed state assembly campaigns in the state because of the historical nature around it. I had people all over the state that was sending messages saying, hey, I'm rooting for you. Or, hey, I donated like $100 to you today, or something along those lines. And not just in Wisconsin, but outside of Wisconsin too. I got donations from 48 different states and 2 U.S. territories.
Wow.
So that's how my name spread out. And then now, of course, you got somebody like our now President Joe Biden and Vice President Kamala Harris endorsing me. People like Senator Baldwin, who's an amazing, wonderful woman who endorsed me. Medela Barnes. And, I got my name out there. And now in the LGBTQ world, at least here in Wisconsin, people know who I am.
Which is a wonderful accomplishment.
It is. It is. I get recognized in the store. Like, I'll go to Target. Like, oh my God, you're Jessica, right? Yes, I am. Thank you for running for office. Thank you. I appreciate that.
That's awesome. That must feel amazing. Yeah, that's so cool.
So sticking with the LGBT community and transgender rights, what are your thoughts on transgender girls and women in sports? And what do you make of the recent spate of GOP bills trying to ban them from athletics?
It seems to be kind of the trend this year that this is where the GOP is attacking LGBTQ rights, is having these bills saying protecting, and they use women in sports. They haven't said anything about protecting men in sports, which I find interesting. Whereas, like, what about 5 years ago, it was all of, oh, what bathroom can transgender people use, which is completely ridiculous. So Representative Dietrich, she introduced the Protecting Women in Sports bill here in Wisconsin, and it says that only people of their biological sex can compete in sports of their biological sex. And they want to include the college level as well, too, which I question that because I think the NCAA and these college authorities have some say in this, too. Mm-hmm. It's completely ridiculous. I'm sure Representative Dietrich probably did not talk to anybody in the trans community. That's one of the first questions I want to ask when they have a public hearing on this, whenever that's going to be. And also, I can tell you, having transitioned from male to female, I mean, I don't really feel that athletic strength like I did when I was a male, because I used to play soccer, recreational soccer, and I used to play basketball too. I mean, I'm sure if I did like a lot of weights or whatever, I could gain some muscle, but I've got more estrogen in my body than I do testosterone. Whereas, what about like a female transitioning to male when they're putting testosterone in their body? You know, they haven't said anything about that. Mm-hmm. And honestly, what does it matter? I mean, let somebody compete in the sport they want to compete in.
And I don't even like the disingenuous nature of it too, where they'll talk about, you know, or they'll frame it as we need to protect women's sports. I think we talked about this, Jason, in like a previous episode, maybe last week, where no, they don't care about women's sports. And they're the first ones to dismiss or denounce women's sports when it comes to actually taking women's sports seriously. But when it comes to subjugating and marginalizing trans people, now it's time to actually care about that. And, you know, even like with Wisconsin too, a lot of these states all have very similar types of bills because they're basically just copied and pasted from one or two sources and then just like spread all throughout the country. That's why you're seeing such a slew of bills across the country right now, at least. So I doubt not only did she probably not talk to anyone in the trans community, she probably didn't even do any of the writing herself.
Yeah, I'm sure she did. It just seems to be like this is to do attack against the trans community and the LGBTQ community. And it just seems like that's exactly what it is. Let's just attack the trans community, you know, find something ridiculous to come up with. And this kind of leads into the bigger question and why we should get the Equality Act passed through at the federal level. So then we don't have to deal with any of these other issues. Am I right?
Totally agree. Yes.
And not unique for a conservative talking point, but it's also anti-science. Like we talked about, we said we're going to eventually do a whole episode about the science of transgender athletics.
Because they misrepresent the actual science of it.
Right. Actual scientists, as you were saying, the ratio of testosterone and estrogen seems to be the most vital component to this, and that's why the NCAA already has rules and regulations. It's why most professional sports already have rules and regulations.
The Olympics have regulations on it already.
Yeah. And it's also hilarious when these bills come out and they talk about from kindergarten to 12th grade. Like, really? Kindergarten? We're worried about boys competing with girls in kindergarten? Like, that's going to be some huge issue at that point?
Right.
Well, that's when all the scholarship recruiting happens, you know? It's where they get the scouts, man.
Yeah. I mean, it's harder, you know, when you're on estrogen to build muscles. So I don't see what the big deal is. Although, like, I can say, like, one of my former roommates I used to live with, she's a bodybuilder, and she could probably kick my butt if she wanted to. And probably compete great in sports.
And probably ours as well.
Yeah, I was just going to say the same thing.
Yeah.
But, you know, it's the whole notion, like, what does it matter? I mean, what does it matter if a woman wants to play varsity football on a high school team?
So we talked a lot about politics. We talked a lot about activism. I want to end this on a very light and positive note and talk about some of your hobbies and interests. You told me that you are super into storm chasing, and I just saw that you just got a new role in a theatrical production. I want to
Yes,
know about
I
this.
did. Yeah. So I gotta tell you guys a story.
I'm ready.
That my original major in college was meteorology. I've always had an interest in the weather, and I still do today, because when Mother Nature is at its worst, you see these beautiful towering thunderstorm clouds, or you're driving at night along the highway, you see lightning out in the distance. To me, I just think it's so beautiful. It's so fascinating to me. And I'm a thrill seeker. I'm a adventure seeker. I always love movies like Twister and I just want to be like
Sharknado, the documentary.
Yeah, the documentary of Sharknado, really? But that's super cool.
When you're out there, it's awesome. You're traveling across, the Great Plains, where you see miles and miles of grassland, farmland, and to see these storms, these supercell storms form out of the middle of nowhere, and see twisters strapped on them, it's just amazing to me. It just fascinates me. And I love photography too. I got some really awesome lightning and some tornado pictures on my Facebook as well too. I just think it's the beauty of it. It's the beauty and the thrill of it. And going to the acting, I was a former stage actress. I've always had an interest in theater because I love entertaining. I'm a natural entertainer. And it's been about 7 years since I've been on stage. So I'm proud to say that this is my first ever transgender role being on stage. I am
Congratulations.
a transgender character.
All right.
The name of the play is Islands, and it takes place in Ireland. So I'm playing a transgender character named Gretchen, who owns a bed and breakfast in Ireland. So I have to learn an Irish accent. So I've been working on that.
I think I saw a post of yours saying you've been working with a trainer or something like that, trying to get this Irish accent down. Did I have this right?
MP3 files. Lots of MP3 files.
Joe is the worst person I know with accents. So I would love if he could teach you.
No, it'd be awful.
An Irish brogue.
Oh, God, do not. I'd be the worst.
I remember an early episode where you tried to do a Russian accent. It was the worst thing I've ever heard.
I tried to teach you an Irish accent. It would come out German.
I can give it a shot right now if you guys want to hear it.
Go for it. I'm ready.
Oh, why don't we go have some beer later? I want to have a beer later. I'm really thirsty. I want to get some alcohol in me.
You stereotyping Irish people with alcohol. How dare you?
How do you guys think of that one? Was that pretty good?
It was fantastic.
Hey.
So if anyone would want to find you or hear anything that you've done, obviously I already talked about how we're going to link your Our Voices article in our show notes. Where can they find you online?
Well, I'm Jessica Paige Katzenmeyer on Facebook. Feel free to send me a friend request or follow me on Facebook. Also, I still have my assembly page up there, both on the website as well as my Facebook page. So it's www.facebook.com/just4assembly. And then my assembly Facebook page, I kind of use that as like my public figure page where I give updates or, announce things and kind of let people know what's going on. And if you want to go to my website, I have all my media appearances up there on my website. And you can see more about what my campaign was. That's www.just4assembly.com.
Awesome, Jessica. Thank you so much. This has been an absolutely fantastic conversation. And seriously, people do go out, check her out, her stuff. And seriously, she is an amazing woman and she is definitely worth following and reaching out to.
One last question here. I want to get in.
Sure. Come on, Jason. I was doing the wrap.
Have you given any thought to your future in politics? Are you going to run again?
Yeah. I mean, I said in my concession speech that I will be back. I will run again. I am pretty sure this is probably going to be a local office in April of 2022 next year. So this give guys all little heads here. So I'm excited about that. And it's probably going to be announced here later this summer, I think. But I'm pretty sure that that's where I would want to go. And I may still run for assembly, but that kind of depends on the maps and the redistricting. I know that the maps are going to be redrawn, but we're probably not going to know what those are going to be until right around this time of next year. So I'll go to see if those are going to be favorable towards me or not. But as I said, I will be back, and I promise you all I will be.
I sure hope you do, because you were a fantastic candidate the first time, and you were so excited to watch the first time around. I'm excited to see it again. Jessica Katzenmeyer, thank you so much for coming on our show. And please, for all those listening, go check her out right away. All her stuff will be in our show notes.
Thank you very much, guys, for having me on. I had a lot of fun myself, and thank you for everybody who's listening.
All right.
Thank you for joining us.
Thank you.
Thank you for listening. We hope to see you in the next episode. You can find us on Facebook and Twitter at ThinkProPod. You can email us at thinkpropod@gmail.com. And remember, when in doubt, think progressively. And on today's episode, we don't.
And on today's episode, we forgot to write in the title.
Really? Like the one where we have a guest? I feel like we got really raunchy.
Yeah, it's just talking about Caitlin Bennett doo-dooing herself.
And having sex with children.
Man, it's in the news, man. I didn't have sex with a child. Blame Matt Gaetz.
Where you're here. Let me just try that again.
We do edit.
For the record, Jessica, we edit. So if you ever need to do a retake, you are more than welcome to, because I take plenty of retakes.
If you ever listen to any of our episodes, you will hear all of Joe's outtakes.
You be quiet. You be quiet.